realized that he'd been sleeping for 70 years, since that's how long it takes for a carob tree to grow from seed until it gives fruit. Honi then rushed to his house and tried to convince his family that he was Honi, and no one believed him. Unnerved, he went straight for the Beit Midrash, the study hall, where he overheard one of the sages say to a student, "Your halachot, your rulings, are as enlightened and clear as in the years of Honi HaMa'agel." And Honi tried to interrupt them, to tell him, "I'm Honi," but they neither believed him nor paid him respect. Horrified, Honi prayed for mercy, but tragically died. Rava, a later Talmudic sage, reflects on Honi's death, saying, "This is why people say, O chavruta, O mituta," either friendship or death, because somebody who doesn't have friends is better off dead. In a careful comparison of these two stories, Rip Van Winkle and Honi, really the only thing they have in common is that they both fall asleep for a long time. The point of Rip Van Winkle is that life goes on with or without you, so don't fall asleep. Unlike the heartbroken Honi, Rip is totally unperturbed by the loss of his, albeit annoying, wife and all of his friends, and he lives happily ever after and relatively unchanged by the whole experience of waking up in the future. In the case of Honi HaMa'agel, he also woke up to discover that life had moved on. He may have been sad that his family had aged and died while he'd been sleeping, but when he found himself robbed of his colleagues and his companions at the Beit Midrash, Honi concluded that life was not worth living. And that sums up the premium our rabbinic sources put on having a chavruta, spiritual friendship. And there's a great deal more written by our sages about spiritual friendships forged in their houses of study. In the very first chapter of Pirkei Avot, the rabbis advise, "Aseh lecha rav uknei lecha chaver." Get yourself a teacher and acquire for yourself a chaver, a friend. When we seek out people from whom we can learn, we find beloved chaverim, beloved friends. The most legendary pair of chavruta, of spiritual friends of the Talmudic period, were Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Yochanan was a learned rabbi and the head of the academy of the time, and Reish Lakish was a bandit with no formal Jewish training, but he did have an insatiable curiosity and impeccable street smarts. Someone once compared their odd partnership to Albert Einstein if he were to go toe-to-toe with Al Capone. They were perfect sparring partners for each other because Lakish was unafraid to challenge Yochanan. And it's said that they debated one chapter of the laws of Shabbat for 3 whole years, arguing hotly but respectfully. Except for one time, when Yochanan unfortunately brought up Lakish's sordid past as an outlaw. And Lakish was so upset by his chavruta's disrespect that he got terribly sick and subsequently died. And when Yochanan heard about his dear chavruta dying, he was, of course, inconsolable. Thinking that their beloved teacher might find comfort if he had a new study buddy, the rabbis of Yochanan's academy encouraged a brilliant student, Elazar ben Padat, to study with Rabbi Yochanan. And at first, it also appeared to be a good match. But every time that Yochanan made an argument, his new partner would find a text that agreed. And it only took a few days for Yochanan to become bored and exasperated. "I don't need you to tell me I'm right," he complained. "When I used to argue a point, Reish Lakish would challenge me 24 times over until the matter became clear to both of us." He cried in anguish. "Where are you, Reish Lakish?" And as you might imagine, the end of the story is that Yochanan loses his mind and dies, heartbroken. O chavruta, o mituta, either friendship or death. So deep was Reish Lakish and Yochanan's bond, neither could bear to live without the other. So what I admire most about the second tragic story of friendship is that what made their relationship precious was their shared belief that the other had something to offer them that they didn't have within themselves. They were each other's mirror, showing them what their own eyes couldn't perceive. Their understanding of the world couldn't be complete without the voice of the other challenging them. Good friends exemplify what the book of Proverbs says, that as iron sharpens iron, one person sharpens the wits of another. Bringing this closer in time and to home, we might also say that Wilbur and Orville Wright were not just brothers, but also, in this sense, legendary chavruta partners. They argued back and forth for days on how to design the propeller for their airplane. The arguments grew loud and hot, but throughout, they both constantly listened to each other. Discussion, Wilbur said, brings out new ways of looking at things. At Kitty Hawk, the brothers at last figured out that they didn't need a single propeller. They needed two propellers spinning in opposite directions. And it was the result of them arguing back and forth that they discovered that. And in this way, Wilbur and Orville were not simply inventors, they were peers skilled at debate and argumentation who honed each other's knowledge and grew each other's character. So today I'd like to spend a few moments talking about the value of seeking out spiritual friendships that help us to know ourselves better and to grow our character. Let's face it, most of our social media friends are not friends at all. At best, they are admirers, until, of course, you post something that offends them. And then what do? Unfriend you. There might be people in your lives who are fun to spend time with, but when everything hits the fan, they're not the ones you can lean on to navigate through pain and difficulty. I want to talk about the merits of having companions in life who challenge us, who sharpen us, and who help us to grow to be better at meeting the highs and lows of life. The opening 3 words from this morning's Torah portion are Atem netzavim hayom kulchem, which literally means, you stand today, all of you together. But I hear behind God's words, to stand, you need others, because by yourself, you will surely fall. Even trees cultivate something akin to the deep friendships that Yochanan, Reish Lakish, and Honi found. Did you know that the average tree grows its branches out only until it encounters the branch tips of a neighboring tree of the same height, appear. It doesn't grow any wider because the air and better light in this space are already taken. A pair of true friends is careful not to grow overly thick branches in each other's directions. The trees don't want to take anything away from each other, and so they develop sturdy branches only at the outer edges of their crown. And such partners in trees are often so tightly connected in the roots that sometimes they even die together. Our need for companionship, to share life with peers, to be tightly connected to others is profound. But sadly, studies show that we are living through an epidemic of loneliness, another casualty of clinging mightily to the doctrine of individualism, of which I spoke last night. But it's not only that. Loneliness might well derive directly from our online saturated world and from investing more time and energy into social networking than into important in-person relationships. And consequently, real friendship, deep friendship, is on the decline. 30 years ago, a study showed that a quarter of all Americans reported having fewer than 3 close friends. But in the same study last year, that number doubled. Now 50% of Americans report having fewer than 3 close friends. Per the survey, a mind-boggling 12% of interviewees now claim to have no friends, 0 friends. And that's 4 times as many who reported that 30 years ago. Sure, since the lockdown due to COVID-19, sure, that's partially to blame for today's scourge of loneliness. According to the survey, while nearly half of Americans made new friends, nearly half also reported having lost touch with at least a few friends over the last 12 months. Further, 1 in 7 Americans chooses to live alone. Singles are marrying later, divorce is on the rise, and more individuals prefer to live in privacy than within community. It seems to me that increasingly Americans are living alone in a lonely society. And what I worry about is the longer we try to survive alone, the less we are able to recognize our need for others. Though my aim is not to be utilitarian about the vital importance of friendship, medical studies also prove that loneliness can make most diseases more fatal: cancer, heart disease, and the like. Moreover, when measuring cortisol, the primary stress hormone in our bodies, loneliness causes spikes at similar levels to if you were punched by a stranger. Loneliness is known to lead to depression, and it's not the other way around. Friends don't only play a role in our psychological and our physical well-being, they are crucial partners in navigating what is a very complex world. We need reliable friends and peers and companions to share with us worldly knowledge to supplement our own experience. Like Yochanan and Reish Lakish trying to divine God's will by debating Shabbat laws for 3 years, John Stuart Mill, the 19th century English philosopher and social theorist, said, "The only way in which a human being can make some approach to knowing the whole of a subject is by hearing what can be said about it by persons of a variety of opinion and studying all modes in which it can be looked at by every character of mind." In our day, we might look to YouTube for technical knowledge, but don't we still need our friends for all kinds of subjective knowledge? Don't we still need people we can trust to ask if they were happy that they sent their kids to public school, or how they navigated their first year of retirement, or who their dentist is? If you love your dentist, I am interested. Friends, chaverim, assist us in getting to where we need to go out there in the world. And they can also provide us awareness into what's going on inside of us. A chevruta with whom we feel safe can give us tremendous insight about our personal blind spots. These are people in our lives we might ask, was that text I sent too harsh? Am I just too harsh in general? Do you think that I handled that situation skillfully? When we neglect to cultivate deep friendships in which we ask these tough questions, we may miss the opportunity to enrich our emotional intelligence. If you find yourself bumping into a lot of conflict with others, is there a friend you can count on to figure out why? Why now? How might I get out of this rut? In our tradition, such true friendship is a deeply spiritual endeavor. There's even a well-known Native American metaphor that there are two wolves that are always struggling inside of us, and the one that wins is the one we feed. Well, on the very same theme, Rabbi Dov Ber of the Lubavitch dynasty imagined that the human struggle is that of a divine soul combating an animal soul. When we let our spiritual friends into our lives, he taught, they join our team and make our divine souls fight against our basest instincts, our animal soul, 2 against 1. That reminds me of a story that I heard on a Buddhist retreat about Ananda, who was a disciple of the Buddha and also his cousin, who served and waited on him and assisted him in all things. And he was observing one day how strenuous and long those days of teaching and answering questions were for the Buddha. And he wondered what helped the Buddha keep up such a rigorous and intense life. So that evening he asked whether having good friends was half of it. No, Ananda, the Buddha said. Having good friends isn't half of it. It's all of it. It's all of it. And I personally know that to be true. My chavruta partners, my deep friends, are essential in giving me the spiritual sustenance to be able to show up day after day as fully as I can in all aspects of my life. And that brings me to some final thoughts as we round the corner on our Holy Day season. After we break our fasts tonight, most will go our separate ways, and some of us won't be back until next Rosh Hashanah. I hope not too many. But before we go those separate ways, I hope that these ideas about friendship might also have something to say to you about the spiritual companionship that waits for you here at your temple. When we pray, when we study, when we gather, we are practicing the art of being in spiritual friendship with one another. What each of you have here is a chevraya, a holy fellowship, where we learn together and challenge one another, where we help each other to show up fully as often as we can, where we wake each other up when we've fallen asleep to our highest ideals. Here are people with whom, if you choose to, you may share the vicissitudes of life and navigate the rigorous path of our tradition. This is a precious community of seekers, people with whom to intertwine your roots. Rabbi Pinchas of Koretz, who was one of the closest disciples of the Baal Shem Tov, described what I'm talking about, first by linking his teaching to a Talmudic ruling. That ruling was that on boats that are bound to one another, it's permissible to carry things on Shabbat from one to the other. In other words, two boats, in essence, become a single domain, and therefore carrying your talis or your keys between them is not a violation of Shabbat. But then Rabbi Pinchas continues, boat here refers to the body, as the Zohar teaches. And when two people are bound together in bonds of love, one to the other, even if it's impossible for each one to fulfill all 613 mitzvot, nevertheless, they carry from one to the other. This person fulfilling one mitzvah, that one fulfilling another. All these acts are bound one to the other. This teaching assumes what you and I know but sometimes forget, that we cannot do it all alone, that life can be solitary but doesn't need to be, that friendships cultivated in a natural and loving way not only teach us but uplift us. They help us through the many rough seas that we cross and the anguishing decisions we must sometimes make. Friendships, chavruta, when we tie our boat to each other's boats, when we bind ourselves in loving relationship, when we allow ourselves to be seen and let our own wisdom be sharpened by another experience and our own experience to be sharpened by another's wisdom, I think it is then that we truly, most truly, and most completely fulfill the Torah's command from this morning. Uvacharta v'chaim, choose life so that you may live. A command that was given in the plural. All of you, choose life. All of you, choose life. And all of you will live. And let us never forget that shortly after creating the first human being, God even said, Lo tov hayot ha'adam levado. It's not good for a person to be alone. So let us each go forth from these days of holiness, inspired by the great depth of our tradition, to find spiritual friendship from which we can learn and through which we can teach, in which we can find the support and give strength. Yes, there's a lot to hear online and to glean from social networking, and there is something to be said for personal independence and self-sufficiency, for going it alone. But that's not all life can be. So choose life that you may live, for it is not good for a person to be only alone. Amen. We have more to do. We continue with Vidui Uslichot on page 292. Please rise. We stand in humility, conscious of our failings. Shema Kolenu, Adonai, hear our call. True sacrifice to God is a penitent spirit. You treasure a crushed and repentant heart. For you are close to the brokenhearted, and you give strength to a suffering soul. You are the healer of shattered hearts. You are the one who binds up their wounds. For thus says the high and exalted one who lives forever, whose name is holy. I dwell in a high and holy place, but also with the downcast and lowly, to bring new life to despondent souls, to restore and revive repentant hearts. Together, return now, Israel, to Adonai your God, for you have fallen because of your sin. Take words with you and return to God. Ask the Eternal, forgive what is wrong, accept what is good. We stand in humility, conscious of our failings. We set before you the wrongs we have done. We trust in your compassion, for you know who we are. Shema Kolenu, Adonai, hear our call. Standing on page 296.
Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, אבוא לפניך תפילתנו ואל תתעלם בתחינתנו הזפנים וקשי עורף לומר לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו צדיקים אנחנו ולא חטאנו אנחנו
Together, our God and God of all generations, may our prayers reach your presence, and when we turn to you, do not be indifferent. Adonai, we are arrogant and stubborn, claiming to be blameless and free of sin. In truth, we have stumbled and strayed. We have done wrong. Ay, 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 Dibarnu Dofi, ay, 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 Hevinu, Vehirshanu, Zadnu, Hamasnu, Tafanu Sheker, ay, 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 Yatsnura, Kizavnu, Latsnu, Maradnu, Niatsnu, Sararnu, Avinu, Hashanu, Sararnu, Kishinu Oref, ay, 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 Rashanu, Shichatnu, Tiavnu, Ta'inu, Titanu, ay, 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 Page 299, responsively. For the sin we committed against you through evading and avoiding because we could not face the truth, for our flight into hypocrisy and deception because we did not dare to speak it, for the facts we dissembled and all we glossed over, for the excuses we made, for feeding our bodies and starving our souls, for interfering with the souls of others and neglecting their needs, for shifting our responsibilities for reproaches and recriminations, for our foolishness, our folly, and false standards, for seeing these things only in others, never in ourselves, for our complacency which blinds us and our self-righteousness which lessens us,
for calculating kindness and measuring out pity, for charity that is cold and prayers without feeling, for withholding our love,
for the appeals that we ignored and the people whom we refused, for the affection which died in our lives that became bitter, for the visions which faded, the ideals we neglected, and the opportunities we lost,
for fear of change and renewal
and our unbelief,
for saying prayers aloud but refusing to listen for
being our own worst enemy. On page 300, alternately Hebrew and English with me. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha be'ones uveratzon, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha be'yod'im uve'lo yod'im. The ways we have wronged
you under duress and by choice, and harm we have caused in your world consciously and unconsciously.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha bivli da'at, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha beritzat raglayim lehara.
The ways we have wronged you through our thoughtlessness, and harm we have caused in your world through impulsive acts of malice.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha bechozek yad, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha bezilzul horim umorim.
The ways we have wronged you by abusing our power, and harm we have caused in your world through disrespect to parents and teachers.
Page 302. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha beyetzer hara, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha bechashyut orech.
The ways we have wronged by giving in to our hostile impulses, and harm we have caused in your world through inflexibility and stubbornness.
Ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha bechachash uvechazav, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha bekalut rosh.
The ways we have wronged you through lies and deceit, and harm we have caused in your world by making light of serious matters.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha besiach siftotenu, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha betzarut ayin. The ways we have wronged you in our routine conversations, and harm we have caused in your world through envy. Ve'al kulam eloah salichot, salach lanu, mechal lanu, kaper lanu. For all these failures of judgment and will, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us,
lead us to atonement.
invite you to the silent Cheshbon HaNefesh on pages 308 and 309.
Good Yontiv, everybody. My name is Gaia Goldman, president of the CBHT Board of Trustees. You've made it to the announcements. Family services begin in the sanctuary at 2 p.m. Enhanced Yisker experience will be held in the library at 2:30. and afternoon Yizkor and Ne'ilah services resume at 3:30 here in the sanctuary, followed by a light snack to break the fast, sponsored by Sisterhood, Brotherhood, and CBHT. Thank you to our special High Holiday Sacred Music team, Sarah Kim Senior, our Kol Simcha director, accompanist Kyle Ritter, thank you Kyle, student cantor Seth Kellum, and the Kol Simcha and ensemble whose names are listed in your program. Thank you to Marty Gillen and Debbie Cooper, who lovingly compiled the Roll of Remembrance video for this afternoon's Yizkor service. Thank you to Sabrina Rokov, Harris Livingston, Shannon Tuck, Pam Shelton, Jackie Childs, Tikkun Gottschalk, Darren Green, and Phyllis Nalick for greeting all of us at the door, and to the safety committee members, Don Nalick, Marvin Wolf, Rich Eichen, Jack Klein, Eric Neymark, and Raymond Capeluto, who are assisting our officers in minding our security throughout these Holy Day services. And finally, thank you to our amazing stream team, Kevin and Asher Ring, for helping us make services available to all the members of our congregation. Thank you also to our office staff, Buffy Skolnick and Debbie Cooper, assisted during this season by Jackie Childs. And thank you to Kent Tombo and his custodial team, Robert Borkat, Jacob Ellis Goto, and for all they do to make our celebrations and holidays smooth and beautiful for us. Good Yom Tov.
As we turn to page 318 and rise for our closing words and song, I did begin this service by inviting you to the idea that everything should touch you. If it hasn't been your custom to come back at 3:30, you're missing the fun. It's not complete unless you do it here with us. So please, please, please avail yourself of this amazing opportunity. It's really, we've crafted something very different for the afternoon. It has a different feel and a different flavor, and it does different things for us and to us and with us. So I invite you to continue on to the finish line. Page 318, infinite source of goodness, help us to see the good in ourselves, in others, and in the world around us. Teach us to cultivate a discerning mind, to know right from wrong, and a listening heart open to love and forgiveness. Guide us to walk in your ways with integrity, ever faithful to the promises our forebears made, and may your goodness inspire us to do what is just and right.
Hayom tichatzenu, Hayom tifarhenu, Hayom tikadleinu, Hayom tirashenu letova, Hayom tichlevenu l'chaim tovim, Hayom tishma shavateinu, Hayom tikabel. Et tefillatenu.
Hayom titmechenu.
Good Yontif, good Yontif to all of you.
Abby, picture.